Hello and welcome to Türkiye Talks. Today we are going to talk about US midterm elections together with Kadir Üstün from Washington and Ali Demirdaş from Georgia. Hi, first of all, let me start with you, Ali. It's been, before the elections, I think in the US, the slogan of the Republicans was a red wave would come and they would win the majority in the Senate, in the House of Representatives. Also, there were elections for governors in several states. But after the voting, the first results showed that there is no a big wave, and even the Democrats now talking about a red ripple, so to maybe humiliate the Republican result. So what is your first impression about the elections? Is this, can we talk about a failure from the Republican side, or the expectations were a little bit exaggerated? What is your opinion on that?
Exactly. The expectation was for the Republican Party to sweep across both, chambers of the Congress, but the results have shown that actually it is not a Republican tsunami. That's what they used, tsunami. There was supposed to be a red tsunami that would sweep across Washington D.C. But today, Washington Post put up a headline there. The Republican tsunami turned out to be a Republican puddle. After the rain, there's this little piece of water accumulating on the ground. So it turned out to be a Republican. I believe it turned out to be a Republican failure in that they couldn't secure a majority, especially in the Senate. I think one reason why this has been the case, the women from the Democratic Party, they were so organized after the Supreme Court's decision about abortion that they went to the polls and they made sure that their votes basically were counted. So, and there was a kind of overconfidence from the Republican Party in that, because the economy is not doing well, because the inflation is so high, because the gas prices are soaring at the moment, and which is very important for a country like the United States, the Republicans thought that it would be an easy home run at the elections, but it didn't turn out to be the case. And at the moment, I'm looking at the results. It is still neck and neck, like 48 to 48 on both sides. But again, it has turned out to be a kind of failure from the Republican Party side.
Kadir, you live in at the heart of U.S. politics in Washington. These results, how Washington felt it. There are actually two things to be discussed. First of all, this election itself, the consequences, what will happen in the US Congress. This is one thing. And the second, what it shows us about the upcoming presidential elections 2 years later. So how do you see that in this regard?
So as you both mentioned, there was an expectation for a Republican win. They were talking about perhaps a red wave sweeping through the country, and then Republicans could could take over the House of Representatives, and they could perhaps go as far as 30 plus seats majority in the House, and then they could even flip the Senate. And that didn't happen. Of course, economy worked against Democrats. The Biden's party, Biden's popularity is not high, But on the other side, Trump's popularity is not high either. And last night, we've seen a definitive defeat of Trump candidates all throughout the country. So Republicans, it was, like Ali said, it was a broad failure on their part, but we should specify more the Trumpian Republicans that lost. When you look at Florida, for instance, DeSantis had a good night. He might actually be more emboldened to run against Trump or run alongside Trump. We'll see how that plays out, because Trump does want to run. But when we look at places like Georgia, where Ali is there, the Democrats voted for Democratic, Senate candidate Warnock, but they didn't make it above 50%. So, well, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats didn't, they didn't sweep. They didn't have amazing nights. It's just that the expectation was, historically in the midterm elections, the ruling party or the president's party usually loses support and loses seats and loses control of the House of Representatives or Senate or both. That might still end up happening, but not in a very convincing way. The House will probably become, Republican dominated, but the difference of seats between the two parties will not be that large, and that will give some vindication to Biden and the Democratic Party. But we should also point out that while Trump wanted to make this night about himself, right? He made sure that in the party put forward Trump candidates. We've seen that in Pennsylvania, we've seen that in Georgia, we've seen that in many other places, and these candidates didn't win. At the same time, Biden did not go support Democrats in most places, except in Pennsylvania, because the balance of the Senate could be flipped. So Biden stayed away from going to support Democrats in many states, largely because his approval rating is low, and many candidates didn't want to be associated with Democrats, didn't want to sort of bear the burden of the economy, or they didn't want to be punished for inflation. So that didn't happen. On the one hand, Democrats didn't get punished because of the economic situation, and abortion definitely played a role. And then on the Republican side, Trump candidates were not successful. In a midterm election, candidate profiles are important. We see that Trump's influence is continuing in the Republican Party, but we are also seeing that it has limits. Trumpists are not able to reach out and garner more votes from more independents and even Democrats. So going forward, this doesn't bode well for somebody like Trump. He's expected to announce his candidacy next week. Regardless, I think it might be smarter for him to support DeSantis and create unity in the Republican Party, but he probably won't do that. He will want to run himself. And for Biden, in an environment where Trump is weakened, Biden may, Democrats might ask Biden to step aside and maybe put forward younger candidates who can, take on people like DeSantis. But again, we are seeing no defeat for Biden. So Biden, if he wants to run, there won't be very strong arguments against him, because in 2020 he beat Trump. In the midterms, he reversed a historic tradition where the president's party loses votes. So it's going to be interesting in the next 2 years when he's considered a lame duck. He's going to, I think, govern as a relatively stronger lame duck, not as a lame duck president that has been defeated by Republicans in the midterm. So I guess there's a lot more to say about many of these issues, but let me stop there.
Yeah. Ali, maybe you can also talk a little bit about Trump's future. He said last night, this is a quote from Donald Trump. He said, if about the candidates, I think if they win, I should get all the credit. If they lose, I should not be blamed at all. So this is Trump being Trump.
Yes, exactly.
How do you evaluate the future of Trump in regard to these election results? As Kadir mentioned, he's going to run for the next elections, obviously. But do you think he will have chance? Does this election results show anything about his future?
Yes, I agree with Kadir that Trump has proven weaker than expected, actually. Trump threw his support behind certain candidates, but they lost, which actually indicates that his clout, his power to influence the population is basically declining. So there are a couple of things that I see as reservation with regards to his candidacy for 2024. First of all, he's almost 80, and his health is kind of declining. He's aging, and there are signs that he is becoming like the second Biden in terms of how he interacts with the crowd, in terms of how he carries himself on. That's one thing, and I'm kind of hesitant about saying that Trump is going to run for 2024. He's going to be 82 years old, and this country, I mean, when I look at the history of the Soviet Union in the 80s, what we saw in the 80s in the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union was governed by the presidents who were 80 plus, and they were dying in a couple of years in succession. So what I see is the United States is becoming like the 80s of the Soviet Union, in that we don't have good quality, in quotes, good quality leaders that would carry the country forward in the times of crisis. The second thing is, Kadir mentioned about Dos Santos. I have talked to people here in Georgia about 2024, and they said they would see Trump and Dos Santos side by side running as the president and the vice president. Actually, I have taken pictures of the flags. They prepared the flags, Trump, Dos Santos 2024. But when we look into the deeper picture far deeper, we see that Trump has begun to see Dos Santos as a threat for his political career, for his future. He has started to talk in quotes trash about Dos Santos and his performance in Florida. And there was an opinion poll last week. They asked the Floridans which one, whether Trump or Dos Santos, they would like to see in 2024. They literally, the Floridans basically split in half, 50% Trump, 50% Dos Santos. So what I'm seeing here is, if Trump continue, Trump doesn't like anybody who looks stronger than him around him, right? He likes to be seen as the sole ruler, sole governor. So Dos Santos is perceived by Trump as a threat. Therefore, I am seeing a kind of Republican Party civil war going forward, going into 2024. So the civil war is going to be between Trump and Dos Santos, and we have still yet to see, who is going to carry the Republican Party into 2024 elections. based on my observations, I see DeSantis, I consider DeSantis having a little bit more chance against Trump because he is young, he is charismatic, and he has implemented policies in Florida that would be accepted by the Trump supporters. So given that Trump is very old, Trump basically had his days in in 2020, 2019, I think the Republican Party constituents will prefer DeSantis over Trump, but DeSantis will make sure that he is going to follow Trump's policies that basically led to a Trumpian victory in 2016. So it is going to be a very interesting 2 years going forward, 2024, in the United States.
So is this what people say about Trumpism without Trump? So is this what you are talking about?
Trump basically elevated the political stance in the Republican Party in that he was radical. He took radical steps regarding the immigration, regarding the economy, regarding China. So the next candidate, the Republican candidate, will try to either hold this bar at the same level, or he will want to elevate the bar to a further, notch, a couple of notch over. So, and by the way, DeSantis is acting in Florida regarding the immigration, for example. We can tell that the next Republican candidate is going to be more radical than Trump, because the constituents, the Republican constituents, the Trumpian supporters liked what Trump did. Okay, therefore, the next candidate, which presumably going to be DeSantis, is going to take Trumpian politics a couple of notch, further, and he's going to be even more radical when it comes to the LGBT, when it comes to abortion, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the economy. So it is going to be a very hot, contested 2 years ahead of us in the United States.
Can I say something about this, Bora?
Please.
Well, DeSantis, the challenge for him is, like you said, he does, he kind of affirms Trump's points. It's just his tone is different, his style is different, so he might have a broader appeal. But at the same time, he may not have appeal outside Florida all that much. He has to build that. I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying he has yet to build that. He has now a national profile. He's managed the, COVID in a different way in Florida. Florida is, because of that, he has some among Republicans respect for that, because he didn't go for a full shutdown during COVID. And then, he managed the national disasters relatively well. So he has a persona and high profile, national profile, but it is at the heart of it, he remains center right, if not more right of the right personality or a political leader. So his challenge will be to reaching out to the independents, because most of the country, you can't become a president if you don't get support from the independents in many states, and he has to keep the Trump base on his side. Like Ali said, a ticket between the two of them could theoretically work, but then you have a Republican ticket that is very right, and we've seen the abortion debate that really pushed away a lot of Republican women as well in the suburbs. So it's not a winning like slam dunk ticket if you have a ticket where your president is extreme and then your vice president is less extreme. So I'm not sure if that will have a broad appeal throughout the country, because Trump lost to Biden, and a lot of, maybe quarter of the country still believes that, Trump is still should be the president and Biden is not legitimate. A good quarter of the country still believes that. But last night we've seen that you can't go far with this, right? You can't go far with Trumpism. You can have a solidified base, you can mobilize them, bring them to the polls, but 40% of the country defines themselves as independent, and you need a good support among the Republican-leaning independents. So I think Trumpism last night, we've seen the limits of it. It can drive the Trump base. It can, it can get Republicans to vote for Republicans. It can mobilize them, but it can't expand it. And we've seen that it is unable, and a lot of Republicans actually avoided talking about, abortion, because abortion used to be a Republican winning topic. They used to always, bring this up, and then, but now that abortion is, because of the Supreme Court decision, that issue kind of flipped, and it's now working against Republicans. And they hope that economy working against Democrats would benefit them in a big way. Anyway, long story short, the Florida's, Governor DeSantis, he got almost 60% of the vote, 59 point something in Florida. Florida is now comfortably a red state. But is he going to be able to, garner support in the Midwest? In critical swing states throughout the country. He's gonna have to build that. But if it plays out like Ali mentioned, if there's a civil war between Trump and DeSantis for the future of the party, that will waste a lot of time for them. And DeSantis may, it might end up being like two wounded politicians, and then of course the Democratic candidate, if that's Biden, this may not matter that much, but if Democrats are able to put forward a perhaps more younger and more appealing candidate, then things might change. So this pushes Biden to consider not run, right? If Trump doesn't run, if DeSantis runs, Biden may not want to run. Anyway, we are talking about quite a few theoretical scenarios, but I think I agree. The Republican Party has been in an identity crisis for a while now, and they are seeing that definitively with these results, that Trumpism can go only so far.
Do you have any comment on the situation loss of Dr. Oz? Because in Turkey, many people were waiting for the results. He seemed to be the stronger candidate for long because his competitor had health issues, but still, despite his situation, he was able to defeat Dr. Oz. What is your comment about this? Do you think this is again related to the issues that we have already talked about, or there are something else behind this failure or loss, let me say?
The Republican Party, I wouldn't be surprised if a third party in the United States is created as a result of the friction between Trump and DeSantis. So that's that there. When it comes to Dr. Oz, I mean, he lost by almost 1.5%. So it was still a neck and neck race. But the problem with Dr. Oz was, first of all, he was perceived as a New Jerseyan, not Pennsylvanian, you know. So he basically failed to appeal to the broader population of Pennsylvania in that, okay, I am going to resolve your issues. Here are the problems. Then, so some people in Pennsylvania didn't consider him as purely Pennsylvanian, so that worked against him. It was his disadvantage. Also, he is seen as an elite, as opposed to someone who cares about the problems of the rural Pennsylvania. I've been to the state, and it is a very rural state. So it's a state where the economy is suffering greatly. So I think he has failed to appeal to the rural population there, and basically he lost to Fetterman. And in the last debate between the Fetterman and Dr. Oz, he basically used Fetterman's ailment. You know, he had a stroke a couple of months ago. He wasn't able to speak. He wasn't able to think for some time. So he brought that up to the forefront, and some people didn't like it. Like, why would you pick your opponent from a health perspective, from a deficiency? So therefore, all these came together. He lost, but he lost with a very slight margin in his state. Actually, I was today. I tweeted something that now that there is still a room for the first Turkish American senator in the future, I may consider running for Senate or Congress in the next couple of years to compensate Dr. Oz's loss. So
yeah,
that's what I said today.
Okay, good luck with that. What about the composition of the new Congress? Kadir, you mentioned that Biden will be a stronger lane back, even if he's going to be not going to be the president in the next elections. About Turkey's relations with the U.S., there are issues which are pending in the Congress. You know, the F-16 issue, other problems. Do you think this new composition of the Congress will help Turkey, or the things will be business as usual? What is your opinion on that?
Well, when House of Representatives goes to Republicans, that means you won't have much legislation done unless you can negotiate and you can maybe win over some Republicans based on whichever the issue is. But if they had had the success that they expected, if they had 30-something, majority, and also flip Senate, that means they could have come after Biden administration in a big way. They could have started, even impeachment was being talked about. They could come after Biden through some impeachment process, etc. So what happens now is that, let's say their lead is 5 to 10 seats in the House. That means, Biden will have to negotiate with specific House representatives if he wants to pass any kind of legislation to get their support. And that is more doable than a united Trumpist Republican Party where, they will just refuse to cooperate with Biden. But it's still going to be difficult, right? Cooperating with a Democratic administration or any Republican, they'll have to think twice. But it doesn't mean it can't happen, because you go in, and if they have specific interests locally, you can address them and you can maybe get their support. But with respect to Turkey, Senate approves arms sales, and in this case, the opposition to Turkey's F-16 purchase, for instance, was coming from a Democratic senator from New Jersey. So and that hasn't happened, or at least Biden administration was able to negotiate with senator from New Jersey. I'm escaping. what was his name? I couldn't remember it for the moment. But his support, his opposition, Biden administration was able to talk to him basically, and he dropped his opposition to this. And the balance in the Senate, it looks like it's going to remain the way it is. It's going to be 50-50, and there is no new senator that is clearly anti-Turkey or pledged to block this process. And actually F-16, most of the critical things have already been taken care of, and it might actually go through Congress before Congress swears in January. So there may not be there probably won't be an immediate effect on F-16 deal. But next 2 years, if Biden is a lame duck, a somewhat stronger lame duck, but still, nevertheless, he can't really, have the full support of the Democratic Party in Congress. He can't just decide. So that might weaken his hand in international affairs, but it would have had a much bigger impact if he lost the Senate, because Senate has a much bigger role in foreign policy.
Okay, Ali, what is your opinion on that? Maybe, as you said, maybe you will run for the election someday. I don't know if you are going to be red or blue. I'm not asking that. But tell us about your opinion about the situation in the Congress with these new senators and representatives.
The U.S.-Turkey relations, the problems between the two countries transcend beyond the party lines in Washington. So no matter which party comes to power in Washington, whether Democrat or Republican, the problems will still persist. Okay, and there is a misperception or misconception in Turkey that if Republicans come to Washington, if Republicans take control of the Senate or the House of Representatives, the Turkey-American relations will become better. It is true to some extent, but here is how I see this situation. The Democrats basically conduct Turkish-American relations in a more hostile way than do the Republicans do. Okay, so basically the Republicans are less hostile to Turkey or pursue less hostile policies vis-a-vis Turkey than the Democrats. But again, end of the day, both parties still pursue the policies that have perpetuated for the last 10, 15 years. I think the biggest problem between Turkey and the United States is Syria. Okay, not the F-16s, not S-400s, not any other, the Halkbank. Those are not the bigger issues between the two countries. The biggest problem between the two countries is Syria, particularly the YPG/PKK. So, I mean, when we look at the Ukraine situation, Turkey and the United States are getting along really well, much better than they do in Syria. Okay, and it tells me that there is something in Syria that permeates into Democrat and Republican party lines, that no matter who comes to Washington, the policies persist. Okay, of course, it started with Obama. Obama was a Democrat, right? The Obama policies in 2014, 2015, literally undermined Turkey's security in Syria. When we look at the Trump era, Trump came to power in 2016. He was a Republican. He basically handled the Turkish-American relations much better than his predecessor. But again, he was the one who threatened to ruin the Turkish economy if Turkey conducted a cross-border incursion into Syria. Regardless, he was the one who basically gave the green light to Turkey, and Turkey started cross-border operations into Syria against the YPG. So what I'm trying to say is, I am not expecting any meaningful change in America's Syria policy and Turkish-American relations in that regard. But in other ways, there might be some improvements, particularly in economy, in terms of economy, perhaps the F-16 issues, and regarding Ukraine. Another important thing that we need to keep in mind is that if the Republicans take control of the Senate, along with the House of Representatives, the American foreign policy vis-a-vis Ukraine is going to witness a monumental shift. Okay, the Biden is going to be a true lame duck when it comes to the Ukrainian American foreign policy vis-a-vis Ukraine. So if that happens, that change is going to reflect upon Syria. It is going to reflect upon the Turkey's Syria policies as well. So what I'm seeing is, if both chambers of Congress were to be controlled by the Republicans, the Ukrainian war, the Ukrainian situation is going to be thrown into the back burner, and the U.S. is going to focus on China and the Pacific, much more so than what Biden has been doing in the last couple of years. So that may open up some venues, some space for Turkey to negotiate with the United States and have some gains in Syria. But again, I am not expecting the U.S. withdrawal of support for the YPG in Syria, no matter which party comes to Congress, basically, whichever controls Congress. So the last thing that I want to say is the mutual relations between two countries. When it comes to Syria, whenever Turkey resorts to force, that's military incursion or threat of military action against the YPG, that is when Turkey wins the arguments. That is when Turkey wins against the United States in Syria. Therefore, instead of focusing on negotiations and policy or politics, Turkey may want to start, becoming a little bit more assertive militarily when it comes to Syria. That is when Turkey is going to win big in the area. That's how I see the situation there.
Well, yes. So this was an important elections. It gave some idea about what can happen 2 years later. So Trump without Trumpism. It also showed that there is no red wave, no red tsunami. So there is more balanced situation in the US. Thank you very much for your comments, Ali Demirdaş. Kadir, thank you very much. So hope
thank you, Bora.
next time. Thank you.